Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I appreciate you guys stopping by and taking a look at my video in the off time of a tournament. Now, for all of you who have been watching my videos for a long time, you do know that probably 90% of the people that I have subscribed to me at this point are from the Philippines. So I'm going to go ahead and speak some Tagalog to them real quick. So I'll be returning back to English in a minute. Magandang umaga, aking mga kaibigan, kamusta? Mabuhay. Let me see. Messiah Akong Mukita King Muli. And this one is a little bit tough for me to say. I'm gonna see if I can get through it. Maraming Salamat po sa Nananood ing Aking Maga video. Alright, that's all. I think I got it. Let me know in the comments if I messed it up. But basically, anybody who doesn't speak Tagalog, I was just saying good morning to my people in the Philippines. My friends, how are you? Nice to see you again. And thank you very much for coming by and watching my video. And Mabuhay is long live or long life. Appreciate you guys very much for coming by and taking a look at my video. This is a purely Philippines video. We have Rogelio Antonio Jr. Some of you guys might know him on chess.com as GM Joey1, I believe is his name on there. And then, of course, we have Wesley So. I polled a lot of people, a lot of my subscribers and stuff, and they wanted to see Wesley So versus Roderick Nava. Wesley So did mention at one point that he did play Roderick Nava, but I could not find any games anywhere. If anybody has any games that they played that I can confirm and look online and try to get the PGN for that, let me know. Yeah, like I said, in the databases that I looked at a few of them. Three, I couldn't find any Roderick Nava and Wesley So games, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Rogelio Antonio Jr. versus Wesley So, and this was taken from 2009. And at the time, Wesley So was still in the Philippines. He represented the Philippines up until 2014, and then switched over to the United States. As some of you guys, I'm sure, saw, he just now officially, I think 1 or 2 days ago, just got his official visa or his official citizenship papers for the U.S. So he is officially a U.S. citizen all the way. But if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and take a look and see what we have for this game. All right, let's roll. Let me get the volume hooked up here. Forgot to do that. Bam. All right. All right, so we have E4, we have C5, we have knight to F3, knight to C6, bishop to B5, we have knight to F6, we have E5, and we have knight to D5. And so we have the, I'm trying not to mess this up, we have the Sicilian defense, the Nyezhmetdinov-Rossolimo attack. That's a long word. It's crazy long. But yeah, so we have that attack. Of course, as you guys know, we have the Sicilian on the board. And we are actually going to be getting into the novelty very, very soon. And I'll explain to you guys exactly why. But we do have castles for white, knight to C7 for black, bishop takes C6. We have pawn takes C6, and then we have rook to E1. And this is the novelty of the game, like I said. And basically, like I always say before, when you go back and look at the game, this knight moves so many times from the opening. Usually, when you have like a bishop or a knight that makes multiple moves in the opening, you're going to be getting into very, very shallow water. So you're going to be arriving at a novelty at move 7, which is where we're at. So 7, knight to E1. Up until this point, I think there were 4 or 5 different moves that had been played. Not sure which ones. Possibly like bishop G4, maybe G6, preparing the fianchetto to bishop and stuff like that. But like I said, we do have rook to E1, which is the novelty of the game. And so we see G6 by black. Knight comes to C3. We have bishop to G7. We have knight to E4. We have B6. Just making sure that we protect this, this pawn. There really wasn't a much better way. I mean, knight to A6 could have been played, but you're going to be after the pawn comes here, the bishop comes here. You're going to be having some problems. So you're going to have to go B6 anyway. And then we see knight to. It's kind of a cute little move. Knight to F6. There's some tactics involved with this, so it's not like the knight is just getting given away for free. So we do see king to F8 in the position, but if we do back up, of course, if the knight is taken with the pawn, we're going to be seeing pawn taken back on F6 with check here, and so the king is going to be coming over to F8. Most logical move. because you're going to be wanting to take back once this pawn does take this bishop. So the pawn would take the bishop on g7. The king would take back, and you could see something possibly like rook to b1, maybe something like b3 or d3. You know, your ultimate goal in this particular position with the king being like this on these dark squares, you're going to want to get this bishop into play. So probably b3 would be the most logical choice, you know, getting this bishop hooked up on this diagonal. But going back to what we had, like I said, we did have king to f8. So Wesley So does sidestep that. And so we see knight down to e4. The bishop comes to g4. We have d3. And this is actually the point in the video that I want you guys to go ahead and stop it real quick and see if you can guess the move in this position. What is the best move in this position? There's a difference between the best move and what Wesley So actually plays. So we'll get into what Wesley So actually plays after a while. But like I said, if you want to go ahead and stop it and see what's the best move for black here, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So for those of you that recognized that this is a pin with the knight, so it basically means that this pawn is actually free. Now, it's a little bit complicated as far as you winning the pawn. You do have to follow up accurately to actually truly win the pawn because it can become an issue. But what the move is bishop takes e5 because, like I said, this knight is pinned, so it's undesirable to go into this situation here because now you're just down, you know, an entire queen, and you know your only possibility probably at this point is to probably try to throw a little in-betweener in there and move the king, you know, one way. But like I said, it is bishop takes e5. The knight is pinned. So the follow-up for white, most logical follow-up is going to be knight takes c5. You know, testing what black wants to do, because if they just, you know, if they get passive and just do a natural take back, you're going to be just dropping the bishop. You know, it's just a nice little tactic in there. And so you're going to be getting your pawn back there. But what you want to do after knight takes c5 is actually check the king on h2. You know, like I showed before, there is a pin here, so the king is going to have to take back. And then the most accurate way to go about doing this is to check with the queen on d6. And then the king would retreat back, and then the queen would take on c5. And then as you can see, black has won a pawn in this position. It's not like clearly better for black, but you know, you have to think about when you're playing human players psychologically and you're down a pawn, you know that you're down a pawn. So even if the computer doesn't really tell you that you're much worse, psychologically you're thinking about being down a pawn pretty much while you're down a pawn. So there are a lot of times where I'll be studying openings or something like that, and it's not giving that great of an advantage for, you know, the side that I'm on. But if it's a pawn, psychologically it's a pawn, and you're playing human players, you're not playing a computer. So you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about your own game. So to go back to what we saw in the game, after d3, Wesley So played very cautiously. Now, he was a GM at this point, but as you guys know or familiar with Rogelio Antonio Jr., you know, he has been on the scene since I think the late 80s. So I think that, you know, he probably figured that there was some type of problem with taking this pawn, and he would just prefer to play a little bit more solid. Sometimes when you're playing somebody who's much older than you or who has more experience than you, you know, you can fall for like their bluffs and stuff like that. But like I said, this was actually a true pawn. And Wesley So goes ahead and he plays knight to e6, just playing a little bit more cautiously, just trying to make sure that, you know, he doesn't fall into any traps and stuff like that, even though he is a full GM at this point. So the knight comes back down to d2, and then the queen comes to d5. We see h3. The bishop takes f3, knight takes f3. We see rook to d8. We see queen to e2. So as you can see, you know, white pretty much has everything fully covered and protected. We see h6. The bishop comes to e3. We see king to g8. Because as you guys know before, you know, the king did move. So he did kind of have a problem with castling. But, you know, this structure is not easily broken down by white. So the king is actually, you know, he's doing pretty good. So we see c4 by white, which is a little curious because it does allow the queen to take on d3. The queen takes d3, rook takes d3, and we see rook a to d1. Of course, we're going to have to trade here. So the rook takes d1, rook takes d1. We see f5. We see pawn takes f6 en passant. We see bishop takes f6. We see rook to d7. And then, like I said before, there was a little bit of problem with him not castling because, you know, now this rook is not influencing this back rank at all. And so these pawns are really kind of vulnerable here. So the king comes to f7, rook takes a7, bishop takes b2. We have rook to b7, rook to a8. We have rook taking b6. We have rook taking a2, rook taking c6, rook to a1 with check. King comes to h2. We see rook to a4, bishop taking c5, rook taking c4. And so we see rook to b6. We see bishop back saving itself on f6. We see the bishop coming back to e3, and we do see g5. And it is in this position that the players actually agree to a draw. I'm not really sure why. I mean, as you can see, the material is fairly equal. You have same color bishops, you know, not that, of course, but you're thinking of, you know, possibly trading some pieces off at some point. And, you know, this structure of pawns is with these kings on the board, there's not really a lot of chances for you to kind of like promote a pawn. So, I mean, it's most likely going to end up being a draw anyway. So like I said, they agreed to a draw in this position. So even though you kind of have draws sometimes, I mean, you can see that there's still kind of roller coaster stuff going on. And Wesley So definitely did have kind of a chance, I think, a little bit of an initiative with taking that pawn on e5. But like I said, I think he just kind of was looking like, man, this is Rogelio. Like, you know, I don't really want to fall into no trap. So I think he just went ahead and just took the safer route and went ahead and just played knight to e6. But that is the end of that game right there. And that was a truly Filipino game for you guys. So Maraming Salamat Po for coming and taking a look at my video. I will be continuously polling you guys to see if there is anything special that you guys want to try to see. And I'm going to be pretty much going with the majority. And so I know pretty much Wesley So is automatic. But, you know, I'm just always curious if you guys want to see something else. If you ever get tired of just seeing Wesley So all the time, you know, let me know. But I appreciate you guys coming by, and I will see you guys next time. All right.